Good people, we welcome you to Universal Heritage Television Naija. Here today, we are bringing you our Daybreak Naija program. And in today's edition, we are going to talk about the cashless policy, the new CBN policies on cash withdrawal. I have here to discuss this matter with me, Dr. Desmond Echeta. Dr. Echeta is a senior lecturer in economics at the University of Agriculture and Economics and Environmental Sciences, Omagwo, here in Imo State. Doc, you are welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
My name is Afam Echi, your host. Remember to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube platform. Now, the issue. Recently, the central bank, in what looks like a big surprise, introduced a new policy which he said is going to run from January 9th. Earlier on in October, it talked about currency change. The 200, 500, and 1,000 denomination was going to be changed. And it was like a jolt to many people. Some people have given it different interpretations. Some described it as political and all of that. While that was going on, the currency change, the new policy of restricted withdrawal emerged a few days back. And if I remember what some of those things talked about, that people are no longer going to withdraw money freely, but restricted to collect 100,000 every week and 20,000 per day. That's for individuals, and 500,000 for business organizations. It went on to say too that POS transactions are restricted to 20,000 per persons, and that if you must withdraw beyond this limit, then you have to pay a processing fee of 5% and 10% for individuals and business organizations respectively. There are other issues. Now, I want to take on you, Doc. Can you tell us the economic underpinnings, the economic values derivable from these policies? Is it in any way going to move the economy forward? Is it going to advance us in any way? The people want to know.
Okay, thank you. Generally, the Central Bank of Nigeria has the responsibility of actually directing the monetary policy stance of the economy. So what that means is that there is an act, there is a law that enables the CBN to do whatever thing that has to do with monetary policy. And in that direction, they have to put things in place to see that they achieve the best for the economy. Now, I want you to also understand that what they have proposed is a step in the right direction. The reason is, although some people might look at some of the drawbacks with respect to timing, you discover that the timing, because this is festival period and going into the electioneering campaigns, some persons might begin to say that the timing is not good. And also looking at the present economic realities, you discover that people are faced with a lot of economic hardship. And you know that this kind of policy is going to set some businesses back, though that will be in the short run. But in the long run, all these things will be smoothened and the economy will at least benefit from it. And again, apart from timing, there is this issue of technology that is associated with all these withdrawals, because what this means is that the central bank, that's the monetary authority, would want a lot of internet banking, a lot of electronic banking. Remember, this is also linked to the redesigning of the currency. The essence of all this is to see that transactions pass through the banking system, because we have a lot of transactions going on outside the banking system, and to that extent it will be difficult for the monetary authorities to regulate effectively outcomes. So, and again, we have a lot of unbanked public. We have so many persons.
Okay, look, let me halt you there. We'll come to that. Drawing from what you said, it will appear that everything is designed to force Nigerians to accept a cashless policy, which the central bank considered is the trend, that is
a global
best
practice.
Now, you talked about internet technology and all of that, maybe the level of financial infrastructure availability. Now, do you think that Nigerians, given our level of literacy, given our level of sophistication, that we are prepared, that we are ready for this?
You see, if you look at when this GSM we are using now, when it first came, not so many persons keyed into it. It was for just the elites initially. Before you could say Jack Robinson, some other persons keyed into it. And today, we have a lot of those that are not lettered that make and operate the phone. So you see, as it is now, I'm sure it's going to be a gradual thing, and before you know it, people will key into it. So the most important thing is starting, and let there be sincerity on the part of the monetary authorities to see that they deploy. There are technologies you deploy that will make transactions seamless. So you make those technology friendly. It shouldn't be a complicated technology. However, you have to also be careful, because if you simplify the technology so much, then the fraudsters could also capitalize into the weaknesses in the system and be able to also defraud unsuspecting public. But it would be good for state-of-the-art technology to be deployed. Simplify it such that it will be easy for those that are not much lettered to be able to also perform the transactions without problems.
I think I agree with you. If you look at what we are using presently, whether it's the GSM, whether it is the ATM, and all, they're all user-friendly, and somebody with a basic knowledge of, can, process and apply those things. But there are still, you are talking about the unbanked, those in the rural environment, like our mothers down there in the hinterland, who keep their money, stocked in one place, and people still feel that they are the ones who are going to suffer more of these things, because some of them may not be able, they do not have the capacity to use even the GS, even the phone, Well, I think the government knows that they're going to make these things user-friendly, but how do we take care of this group?
Yes, that's also part of the reason we're on this program. So there should be reasonable enlightenment to those unbanked public, especially those in the rural areas. There should be advanced campaign. Now CBN had already issued out this monetary policy statement. It is also the best thing to do will also be to go and see how you can educate these people in the rural areas, for them to also understand that the essence of all this is to make their businesses seamless. But again, the best way to go is this cashless, because it will solve a lot of problems. This issue of kidnapping, you come and pay ransom, you need to move all these large sums. So the information is in the public domain. Those people that are into illicit businesses will understand that getting this money out of the banking system will be much more difficult. So they will even limit the extent to which they can ask you to,
the activities,
because most times they'll tell you you are going to bring the money cash, and if you go to bank and you can actually withdraw 1 million, 2 million. But this
anyway, these are some of the reasons people talked about security, copying security as one of the. I will come to you on that. But I do remember too that one of the reasons that informed cashless banking, we've had the cashless banking running all this while, but in reality, the effectiveness is very weak, very, very low.
Yes.
And that is why the limit now is being introduced. Because when people say, when CBN said, do your transactions through the automated process, people are not respecting that. People are still carrying cash because it is a habit we all have imbibed. And now CBN is saying that that has left a lot of money outside the banking system, which they don't have control of. Now what they are trying to do is to wheel back these funds, unbanked funds, back into the banking system. Okay, now according to CBN records, as at September 2022, just like 2-3 months back, their records indicate that there are about 3.2 trillion naira money stock in circulation. But out of that, 80% is outside the banking system, or 2.73 trillion is outside the banking system. Now, as an economist, what is the implication of this for Nigerian economy, where you have 80% of the money stock outside the banking system?
No, that is not correct. You see, when you talk about money, yes, you have different kinds of definition of money. You have the M1 definition of money, you have the M2 definition of money, you have the M3 definition of money. So M1 is just the currency in circulation. Okay. And the currency in circulation might just be 5% of the entire money supply. Just about 5, not more than 6% of money supply. Yes. So when you now consider M2, M3, you see that, for example,
the bank balances.
If you raise a check now, you know the check you raise is not cash, but is as good as being cash. Yes. You can just convert it to cash. So here, I agree that when people do not have the cash, it will actually slow down economic activities. But again, if we go cashless, you can also understand that you can make transfers. Those automated systems can also aid so much. But the fear is that the technology we have is not as good as it should be. It's not as good. In economics, there's what we call positive economics, what it is. Then the normative economy is what it ought to be. So what it is today is that there is a technology that is not efficient. But what it ought to be is that the technology should be efficient, such that transactions will be seamless. And when you begin to talk about 20,000 daily limit, what that means is that the rest of the transaction you can do electronically. Yes. Do this 20 cash. It will solve a lot of problems. But you see, because it's a policy that is new, people naturally would, yes. And again, over the years, people seem to lack confidence in the abilities of the monetary authorities, the CBN. Like where the CBN governor came out to contest as a presidential, in fact, he came out as a presidential aspirant of a certain political party. And to that extent, people will now begin to think that, look, CBN is now an appendage of a political party. And by so doing, the public might begin to lose interest in what the CBN is capable of doing. But I tell you, in Central Bank of Nigeria, you have experts, those that are knowledgeable. You have the research department, those that are actually done research on all these variables to know the extent to which these variables can impact positively on the economy. And going into the 2023 election, it is important that this cashless policy is enforced now, it will help curb the effect of vote buying. Because we've heard that some politicians could move cash with bullion van. So this time around, you are not going to do that. And if you say you want to do vote buying, you can't be asking somebody to give you his account so that you make transfer. So you might even make the transfer and they won't even get the alert. So it will actually help to curb a lot of illicit. And again, you know that why the monetary authorities are also doing this is because during electioneering campaigns, a lot of money will exchange hands for which no productive venture had been done. And if there is no productive venture and money had exchanged hands, it means that those people having those monies, all of them will rush into the market. And before you know it, the prices, they put pressure on the prices and prices will go up. That is inflation.
Because there is no economic activity.
There is no economic activity. It's just a free money. And if it's a free money, everybody will go to the market to get goods and services. And by the time they go there with the money, without a corresponding productive activities, then what you are asking for is inflation. And we are already having 2 digits, 20 point something or 21 point something. Yes, inflation rate. So
and which is not healthy for them.
It's not healthy at all. So what the CBN, remember, they have said this will start by 9th of January. So it's just for us to brace up, face the real challenges and know how to deal with it.
Okay, you sound optimistic that Nigeria is in for a good moment and will come out of whatever.
Obviously,
yes.
Obviously.
Okay. Obviously. Now, drawing from what you said last, it looks like we can extract some benefit from what the CBN policy is trying to achieve. For example, the issue of corruption, which is the vote buying is a corrupt action, So if it's going to curb vote buying, in like manner too, it's also going to give corruption fight a serious boost. Because in the sense, if people are not able to move funds freely, in form of to compromise somebody, to offer bribe, it means that those areas that has weakened the economy are going to have a boost. The economy will be better for it. All the while, the government has been fighting corruption, and corruption itself is fighting back. And maybe because it is reported that people are keeping a lot of money stashed in their homes, and now this thing is happening. Some people are also crying that the thing is politically motivated. Do you agree that the sole purpose is politically motivated or economic? So where do you stand on this, drawing from what the explanation you've given?
Yes, you see, I had alluded initially that if the dispositions and the body language of the executives of the monetary authority, like the CBN governor, trying to contest an election, shows that, well, it's an allegation that it has something to do with politics, and which is not supposed to be so. But I tell you,
but strictly speaking, it is wrong.
Yeah, I know it is wrong. It is wrong.
For the CBN, it's giving
and you see, there was a lot of outrage. A lot of outbursts. People actually rejected his intentions. And when he went to court, he had to also go to court to see if to challenge. Maybe trying to say that it is his fundamental human right. But to that extent, people will now begin to suspect and seem to lack confidence on what the monetary authorities are doing. But again, taking this position now is clear indication that they are no longer listening to the politicians. That's the meaning, because if you check, it is the politicians that have the I would say, the financial muscle to be able to spend all these huge sums. Yeah. If you go to our ordinary markets, so many traders now have the point of sale services. They wouldn't even want to go home with cash. Even in our various homes now, people are emphasizing cashless policy. And the thieves, or whoever, the robbers, they are even careful not to come to your homes now to ask for money, because they know they are not going to get the money. But we've also seen cases that where they say they come with their POS and ask you to also make some transfers. So if maybe your limit for a day is just 20,000, assuming they come with their POS and say they want to rob you with the POS, it's only 20,000 they are going to go home with. And I'm sure they are not going to keep waiting there till the next day to make another transaction. So it is actually step in the right direction. It's just that we think, in fact, CBN is just a suspect because of the antecedent and what they have done in the past. But for now, this decision shows that we have experts thinking. Remember, the redesigning of the currency is to make sure that whoever that is hiding any money anywhere will bring it to the banking system. Yeah. And if you do not bring it to the banking system, it ceases to be a legal tender. Now, this is a follow-up to that policy of redesigning the currency. And remember, they decided to redesign the higher denominations. Yeah. And even when you go to ATM from 9th of January, you are not going to get those higher denominations. What you get is the lower denomination, so that it will just be for small. In fact, we'll call it precautionary spending. It's just going to be precautionary spending.
And you keep every other thing you have to do through
do it through
the other channels
or the automated channels. But again, there is need for the deployment of state-of-art technology
to drive it,
such that transactions, this automated system will be seamless. Because the way it is now, people, sometimes you make transfer and the person you bought the material from will ask you to wait that he or she had not received the alert. So you have to wait. So all these things should be automated. If you also travel outside the shores of this country, people do not even carry cash. What are you doing with the cash? But because we have ulterior motive, that is why we want to keep the cash.
Yeah. Okay, Doc, there is something that worries me about this CBN policy. Drawing from experience, Nigeria is long in planning, strategizing, but very short in implementation, in execution, and realizing the result of the planning. All the while, if you take your mind back, we have always fought money laundering. We have all the instruments to fight counterfeiting, which is one of the objectives of the redesign of the currency and what we are experiencing right now. They have always told us they want to fight to reduce the money in circulation so that there won't be pressure on exchange rates and all of those things. But you discover in reality, practically, the people who claim to be instituting these regulations are the same people that will sabotage it, like the politicians. Now, all this fight against money laundering and the counterfeiting and the rest of it, which has not worked, are you not suspecting that these same politicians, one way or the other, may not respect these rules? Because they are the ones who are used to carrying money in bags, spending to impress the public and do all the negative things. So I have my fears. I don't know. But you sound so confident that everything is going to work out right. But from the benefit of experience, you know, maybe somewhere along the line there may still be sabotage. Yes. Do you not sustain such fears?
So I agree with you. I agree with you to a reasonable extent. But all these things boil down on our institutions not working the way it should work. So if the institutions are working, what that means that the laws of the land must be respected, no matter whose source is good. So if there is no rule of law, it means that there will be a lot of discrimination, and the discrimination against the poor masses, and which will favor the bourgeois that are referred to as the politicians. So let the institutions work, like the CBN we are talking about now. There is an act which establishes the CBN, but all these politicians might have to interfere. But if they are not able to interfere, and if CBN should function the way it should function, there should be mechanisms put in place to absorb those shocks.
You remember in 2019 election where Bola Ahmed Tinubu was suspected of having bullion vans moving into his residence, you know, and because he's part of the ruling government, nothing came out of that, even though there was a kind of public outrage and outcry over it, but nothing came out of it.
That boils down on the institutions not working. If the institutions are working, there are anti-graft agencies like the EFCC, the ICPC, that should have swung into action to be able to know why such volumes of money, what such volumes of money will be doing in a personal residence. But again, let me also tell you, this CBN proposal now does not mean that you cannot also withdraw. You can withdraw your sum, but there is a penalty for withdrawing his sums. You just pay the penalty. So all these politicians also might decide to pay the penalty and move whatever sums they want to move. But the interesting thing is that such movement of funds will be reported
to the CBN.
And CBN will now know who has done such withdrawals and for what purpose. It will also help if the institutions are working. It will also help all these anti-graft agencies to be able to follow up on some of all these corrupt persons in our society.
Well, I don't want to appear too pessimistic, but all the while, the same way we have been reporting money laundering, banks make reports to CBN, but the money laundering thing is been there all over.
Because the institutions are not working.
So I ask you again, how do we make the institutions to work?
It is our responsibility. What you are doing now is enlightening the public. The government is listening. The policymakers are listening. And you see, the people are the greatest influencers because they have to speak out. And as we are speaking out now, telling the government, the authorities, look, making policies is not the problem, it's the implementation. Let our laws begin to work. Let judiciary act like judiciary, not like an appendage to executive. There should be autonomy granted to the judiciary. There should be autonomy granted to the legislature. There should be autonomy granted to the executive. And the checks and balances will come when the time comes. So if the institutions are working, the laws of the land are respected. Whoever, look at in South Africa, the immediate past president is facing serious, in fact, the last time I checked, he was sentenced again to some years in prison. So things like that, that shows that the laws are working. The law should not be respected of persons. If you violate the law should be used in correcting whatever violation, because the law is there, and there is also a kind of pronouncement by the law that, oh, if you violate it, this is what the punishment is going to be. So our interest here is to allow the institutions to work. For example, of course, that is also a big challenge. If the institutions are not working the way it should work, foreigners will not even want to invest in Nigeria, worsening the economic growth dynamics of the country. Because if you have financial transaction with somebody and the person decides not to furnish consideration at the end of the day, you go to court. And if you go to court and you don't have confidence in the court, and the court is not able to function the way it should function,
to save you from,
then the person or persons watching will not have confidence in the system. And you see, that is the law and economic activities. So if if the law is working and an investor sees that, assuming his right is infringed upon, that is going to get justice from the court, what that means that judiciary as institution is working, then they have confidence in the system and be able to invest in Nigeria.
Yeah, recently, I think I buy the idea of what you said, but well, we're watching. Recently, there were developments in the judiciary. It looks like the judiciary have woken up and bearing their fangs, you know, when they committed the EFCC chairman, Bawa, to prison, IGP, and one other top government official. And it's just like the recklessness of the executives have been now.
But that of Bawa was also vacated by another court. So it was vacated by another court. Yeah. So does it mean that all these courts, that they do not have their modus operandi? There should be a standard code.
Yes.
That if A is A, you take it to any other place, it should be A.
You know? So
they did that, and what happened? Before you know it, it was reversed. That of IG of police. We've not seen the IG behind the bars. We never saw Bawa behind the bars. So the institutions are not working.
So it boils down to what you are saying. The institutions are not working. Because it looks like, you know, when people talk about, what do you call it, the separation of powers, in Nigeria, it doesn't seem to be working, and that makes no sense of our democracy.
Yeah, that's the
because the executive arm appear to have more powers, very reckless, muzzle up, yes, both the judiciary and the legislature, because the autonomy thing is not happening. When the man, they say he who pays the piper dictates the tune, and I think that is where much of the problem lies. You know, let's hope we will get there one day. It's a matter of time. Now, do you think, like some people have said, oh, okay, this thing may force people to begin to acquire a savings culture by the time you are restricted from spending anyhow? Do you agree with that opinion, that people might imbibe a savings culture as a result of the new policies?
You see, the policy is not that, is not strictly on savings.
Okay.
You see, if you have your money in liquid form, as in the electronic way, you can also
still
spend it. I don't need to give you cash. All I need is to ask for your bank details, and I make the transfer and walk away. I can even do up to 1 million, but do I have the resources? I can do 1 million from my account. Up to 1 million.
Yeah. You are not restricted.
You are not restricted electronically, but again, savings will actually help investment, because it is what you save that you invest at the end of the day.
No, what is meant is people going to draw cash when you are not having too much money in your hands to spend. You are,
no, it doesn't follow, because you have it electronically.
You can also spend it that way. It's okay. I get what you are saying. Okay, there is so much panic and anxiety, especially from the angle of those who are running the POS. Many people are afraid that it will put them out of job. And the POS has absorbed a lot of persons, and they are making a lot of money from, running it. Now, with this development, what do you think, as an economist, that unemployment that is going to be created, how do you think it can be handled?
You see, unemployment is a big problem in Nigeria. It's not only in Nigeria, in Africa, and even in the world. I know that this is, in the short run, is going to actually deal with such persons.
Okay.
But in the long run, from what the CBN is doing, if they're able to have a lot of money in the banking system, you also discover that investors will come to borrow those funds.
Okay.
When they borrow those funds at a cheaper interest rate, they'll be able to also invest those funds. But it all depends on the level of infrastructure that will be provided by government to create incentive for them to engage in all these productive activities. And when those productive activities are instituted, you see that there will be employment, because when you invest, you need people to work in those ventures. So it's another way of trying to create a job also. You know that it is the private sector that grows any economy.
Yeah.
Yes, but government should create the enabling environment so that all these private investors will see the fund, borrow the fund, do the investment, employ our people. By the time people are employed, it will also reduce the unemployment. And of course, it's in the long run, but in the short run, the POS vendors will actually suffer it. But in the long run, jobs will be created. I'm sure that is...
Yeah, there will be jobs created, because by the time they deploy the financial infrastructures
yes,
in that area, more jobs will be created. Because right now, I'm sure they must have planned to do that. Because right now, we are not even making any headway due to the network challenge we are experiencing.
Yes.
So maybe by the time they expand the bandwidth and whatever it is, then more jobs will be created in that, and that might have a cancelling effect on the POS. Yeah, but well, that's okay. You have expressed so much confidence in the system. Now, what do you think is because of the fears of people? Where do you think the major challenge, the major fear of the people is anchored over the cashless policy?
No, you see, their fears is just those unbanked public. Because I'm sure with those that are in the banking system, those that have transactions to do with the banks, those that are literate enough to perform all these transactions, I don't think they have problems doing that. But those unbanked public, those in the rural areas,
they will now be forced to.
They will be forced
to do banking.
To do banking. Yes, but again, let there be a kind of modification
that will save them.
That will save them. Yes, let there be modification in the system that can actually allow them make those transactions without a lot of sophistication.
Yeah, because I think there is, because even an illiterate person can run an account.
Okay.
I remember back in those days when we were in the bank, people do thumb print.
Okay.
And even in the ATM now, the new ATM I'm seeing, there's a provision for a thumb print. You can run, you don't need, it's cardless.
So you can also speak to, there should be a technology, you can speak to the
voice.
To the machine. And the machine understands your voice. So I need 10,000. And it drops. With your fingerprint, it is matched, and the money drops.
Yeah, a lot of persons in Nigeria do not bank. You know, there's this, and
it has a lot of consequences. It will be difficult for the monetary authorities to plan.
To plan.
Let's have, you see, the quantity of money in circulation at any point in time also influences the economic activities. Yes. Yeah. So if you know what it is, you know when to expand. Is it to expand the money supply, or is it to contract the money supply? So, but if you have some not accounted for outside the banking system, for over time we've seen that people are now bringing notes that have been packed for a very long time, and those notes cannot be used again.
Yeah.
So they might be thinking they have those sums of money without knowing. People will just dig ground and bury their money.
Yeah, like some people are like up there in the north who keep their money in the bushes. You remember when they said there's going to be currency redesign? What do you call this group? The headers came out to say they should be giving more time so that they bring out the money in the bush. So that they can bring out their money in the bush. You can imagine. You know. Okay, viewers, here we round off the program, and here we call it a day. But before then, Doc, what do you have to tell the Nigerian public on the currency?
Sincerely, I want to encourage us to keep faith with the monetary authorities. I don't think they have bad intentions for the economy. all these are geared towards cashless economy, and if we move towards that cashless economy, it's going to help curb a lot of illicit activities going on in the society. Take the case of kidnapping. You know, you have to move large sums to some destinations for you to be able to effect the release of your loved ones. But with this policy, those criminals will also understand that you cannot move such sums again, and to that extent it will reduce their activities. And 2023 election is around the corner, and we have this societal ill of vote buying trying to derail people from voting their right consciences. But with this, we see that vote buying will be reduced to the barest minimum, because those politicians will not begin to make electronic transfer, because vote buying is cash and carry. So you must come with those monies in Ghana must go. But again, it is for the Central Bank of Nigeria to work with all these anti-graft agencies to also checkmate the activities of those that will want to violate the rules.
Viewers, Dr. Echeta has summed it all. We have to accept the situations we are in. It may not be easy at first, but if the monetary authorities and the government keep faith to their promises, I think Nigeria is in for a better society. Here we round off the program and invite you to stay tuned for another edition of the program tomorrow. My name is Afam Echi. Have a nice day.